Hello and welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christine Marie, and y'all, we are in for such a treat today. Before we join every single show, I just take a minute to get kind of centered and take a couple deep breaths myself, and also pray for you and pray along with our guest for the day. And y'all, as I was praying, I just got this sense of there is a lot here for you and me from this beautiful soul, this woman, Kate Buck, who has worked just she's done so much work on herself, so much work in her life and in her business to, yes, help others experience the gift of social media through her business hashtag Blessed Media and Social Media Pro. But more than that, she's done so much work to cultivate herself and so much work to go to kind of the depths of what is required of you and me to get to that next level in our lives, so that our businesses are better for it, so that we have freedom in our personal lives, in our business and professional lives. And so she really is coming in as a teacher for us today. So I welcome you to put questions here in the chat, and I just hope you all, the Knowing community, will join me in giving Kate just a big welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here, Kate. You know, I reached out to you quite blindly. I found you and stalked you, and I just was so drawn to. I was so drawn to some of the pictures you had on your Facebook of some of the retreats you had been to. I've only been to one, but it's by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And you posted a couple pictures, and you said you've been to 19, 20 different events in the last 10 years.
Yeah. He's definitely been probably the single biggest influence in my life. His work has been. I've been influenced by a lot of people's work. I try not to be too dogmatic and get stuck in one lane, because I think we kind of learn these universal laws or these universal truths by reading and learning from all of the masters. Everything from like Plato and Socrates and, stuff like that, kind of reading through the people that are, well known these days. And so, yeah, but if I had to, pick one or point to one person that's had a big influence on my life, it has been Dr. Joe Dispenza.
And when I asked you, I love hearing what people do in their profession, especially when it comes to those who are very successful in the entrepreneurial world. We're all looking to like, oh, what are the quick tips and tactics? But even more than that, so much of our external success is predicated in who we are. And so I like starting there, and then we'll get to some of the practical sides of things. But really, what is your journey? I asked, who are you before we got on, and you were sharing, you kind of have moved through, and not even moved through, taken these different parts of who you are that have grown over the years. But there was one point in your life where you really kind of became a seeker, use your words. And I'd love to hear, how do you even define seeker? It's important that we start with definitions. What do you mean when you say seeker? And what did that look like for you? What was the transition that moved you to that role and taking that place?
Well, I don't know. Thanks for asking that. It's a great question. I don't know that I would have used that term then. I think that's a term that I have picked up along the way that maybe like most accurately describes what I identify as. But I'll say when I was a teenager, I was raised inside of, well, both my parents are Catholic, and there just became a point in time where I didn't, again, identify with the constructs anymore. And for a while, I rejected religion and church altogether. It's actually interesting because there's two books that really changed and a few things that kind of changed, that all happened at the same time. One was a friend of mine had me read the book A Case for Christ in an effort to help bring me back to the church. And around the same time, I read my first Eckhart Tolle book, which was, I did not start with The Power of Now. I started with A New Earth. And that combined with when I was 19, I did the Landmark Forum for the first time. This all happened within a very small window of time. I kind of put the pieces together for myself at that time. I just kind of became, and doors sort of opened for me that it may not be any particular, like my connection with spirit, my connection with my higher power, my connection with source, my connection with Jesus may not be able to be defined by a single methodology. And that's where my love for learning and my lifelong learning began. And
Mm,
I've been very self-directed, and also, people introduce you to things, and
yeah.
you take what resonates, and you don't. But I spent many years inside of Landmark Education, which is more on the personal development side and less on the spiritual seeker side. And I would consider that to be during my years where I was kind of still wanting to grow and develop myself as a person, as a leader.
Mm,
But I wasn't so much on the spiritual seeking side.
yeah.
Um, and I did, I attended all the Tony Robbins and whatever. And then about 10 years ago, my boyfriend at the time introduced me to Dr. Dispenza's work. And
Mm,
it was really there that I felt like it married my two worlds
mm,
together. The
mhm.
side of me that loved like the psychology and the science and the real human world application side, and my love for, or it answered a lot of questions for me in terms of how um like how things are working on a spiritual level.
Yeah,
Like it gave me real foundation, and because of that, I have continued to study his work, and I do, I
cool.
meditate most days with using his meditations. And so then when the pandemic happened, and so that was back 10 years ago. And then when the pandemic happened, he probably wouldn't want me sharing this, but he was still kind of doing retreats,
Mm,
even though the world had shut down. And
yeah.
it was kind of because of that there really wasn't anything else to do. Other events weren't happening. And so a small group of friends and I doubled down during that time. And I
Mm,
actually moved here to Mexico to be
nice.
close to where he was hosting the retreats. And we did a little experiment. We said if we went like all in for 1 year, and we went to every event that we could go to, and then we supported each other as a community to like practice the meditations on a daily basis. We were just curious, like what would our lives look like on the other side of that year? And we did that, and it was one of the most amazing, if not maybe the most amazing year of my life. So,
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love that. I really, well, frankly, the journey to kind of getting to this point, I really love how you effectively credited to your journey to, you really was self-propelled in so many ways. And it's like as you started moving in a direction, people would kind of come out of the woodwork and offer like, hey, here's a book, here's a course. Like you were attracting that because of the work you were doing. A lot of times when we're looking to see real change in our lives, it can be almost immobilizing. You're like, I don't even know where to start. But
mhm.
Kate, what you shared is just a really beautiful example of like just, Jordan Peterson says this. He says like, just clean your room, like just get your room in order. Like before you try to go out on this grand journey, is your home even in order? Like just start
Yes.
there, just do the next right thing. And so in this transformation, it's been over a decade for you. And you started small. You started with just reading books, and then you started doing these kind of bigger practices. We had somebody on the Knowing Show the other day, Bennett, and I just loved the simplicity of how he was like, I just started meditating. And he kind of used meditating lightly because it started with just taking deep breaths. But it's
Mm,
about getting our bodies to a point of stasis and calm to then be able to introduce a new program, a new way of thinking. Because if we're constantly in fight, flight, freeze, we can't really learn something new and be transformed at a core molecular level. So I just love how you started in that way. So you said, would you actually recommend those two books, A Case for Christ and A New Earth? in somebody who is kind of looking at their spiritual journey? Like, how was A Case for Christ for you? Because I actually haven't read that. I watched the movie, actually, but I haven't read it.
I recommend all books, all people. I don't know, yes, of course. I wouldn't, Case for Christ, actually, for me, interestingly enough, like I didn't find the science compelling, but enough for me to sort of rejoin like the Christian faith as an organized
Yeah.
as my path. But what was interesting was that when you were A Power of Now, which I read at the same time, explained to me that Jesus, along with some other very well-known people, and some in the world of science, some in human rights activism, some of the spiritual leaders like that we know have lived on earth, like Jesus and Buddha, that they were high vibrational beings.
Yeah.
Even Martin Luther King, like when I say civil rights leaders, or like Einstein,
Yes.
Tesla, these are human people energies that incarnated. This is what the book says. I'm not saying this as if it's mine. This is what New Earth. And it just made sense to me that Jesus was a very particular, beautiful and part of this story, that there are some people on earth that have the ability to embody their higher vibration selves more than others. And because of that, they see like the I have a dream speech, right? They're able to, what we call manifesting, right? By like casting these visions, but it's also because they see from like a 30,000, or, they see from this higher view. And so for me, that introduced the idea of Christ consciousness, which is more that like we are, and Dispenza talks about this as well, where embodying the energy of Jesus Christ and like accepting Jesus into our lives is about acknowledging that we are both the Son of Man and the Son of God at the same time. So we are spirit energies, but we are here on earth in human form. And he is an example and taught us how to live. I just have tried to, and I'm just now at the beginning of working with a new mentor. I'll have to shout him out in case he's watching this, because otherwise, Cody Jefferson, who's kind of actually reintroducing me to Christ in a way that isn't through the lens of books and things that may have been skewed by by human greed or anything like that, and how to come back to that. So Case for Christ for me was a little bit repelling, but at the same time, Power of Now actually really brought an understanding of who I think Jesus like truly was into my life. And so, I love both of those books. They made a huge difference.
I really appreciate, even though it's not like I have a resounding yes behind this book, there's still a regard and a respect for it. So I appreciate the way that you answered that. It's funny, that book has been on my mind. So you brought it up. So I'm like, a book that really served me was Immortal Diamond by Richard Rohr. That book, have you read it? That added a whole dimension on some traditional, I guess you could say, kind of religious undertones that it's funny. I think every single one of us has a different reason for why we do or do not question some of these old programs, regardless of whether, I think of our intelligences as, yes, we've got intellectual intelligence, but we also have emotional intelligence, and we also have spiritual intelligence and physical intelligence. To the physical intelligence side of things, it is best well described in the book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And he's the one that coined the term post-traumatic stress disorder. And our bodies remember things. And so we can that's the whole element of like being triggered. Our body senses it. Our emotions get thrown back. It's like we're so integrated. So to the point about spiritual intelligence, I felt so much like the majority of my life, I didn't really pursue asking questions because I just didn't know where that would lead me. And so for that, I think it's really it behooves every single one of us to say, why am I in the place that I am in relation to spirituality? Am I operating in fear in regards to that? Or, am I trying to kind of stay in this bubble because I just don't know? And so the lack of certainty, is that something, that's keeping us kind of small on
Mm,
a spiritual scale?
mm.
The more that we get to know who we are, it's like the more we expand. And I just feel like over the last 2 years, as I've been kind of allowing myself to ask questions, God has gotten so much bigger and so much better. And we're so like, there's so many mysteries and there's so much excitement there. So long as I'm willing to not be in a box. And I think that that's the thing.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Not like I have answers or anything, but I think you pointed to two things as curiosity and then willingness. And
Mm,
I think that for me, the curiosity, like, for instance, like my mom had a stroke when I was 14 and she became paralyzed. And I think that even
mm,
going back further, like that is one of these kind of like incidents
wow.
that happens in my life that there's no answer to. And if all like if we're here as a consciousness and consciousness is unlimited and there's an infinite ways it could express itself, then there's infinite ways for us to explore spirituality, which is like I don't have it that anyone needs to explore that spirituality should look any certain way or that there's a right way or a wrong way, because I think that just like what you're saying, like we're all exploring it in our own way. And I don't know if some of it's predetermined by things that have happened to us, and if other things are self-directed, if there's like causation there. But I definitely think that my journey has contributed to me being a quote unquote seeker. And that's kind of the reason that I use that term, is because somewhere along the way, I realized that it wasn't just like this insatiable desire to learn. It was more like I have these unanswerable questions. And the only kind of thing that was bringing me peace was to have a higher level, a greater level of understanding about why or what are the factors that are at play, and then also how to best like have a perspective that's constructive and that forwards my life rather than like being stuck inside of these various things that happen to us along the way. So what I
Mm,
love about that is that means that there's infinite ways that for spirituality to look. There's infinite paths. And there are universal truths. There are some understandings that are core and
yes.
fundamental, but
Yeah.
but that's different than the application of those truths. So,
So
like you
good.
said, whether your friend that was on here before is meditating a few hours a day, or somebody's a book reader or a gardener, or
Yeah.
whether your spirituality shows through in your work, like you actually work in this space, or maybe like me, you
Mm,
don't work in this space, but you work in a different space, but these tools and this knowledge come
right.
through in the way that I am a leader to my team. I think I might be um, freezing a little bit.
Yeah, you're back now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's what I love that. And that's why I love reading everything. Everything from my most marked up book. And if I keep looking over here, that's because I keep looking at my bookshelf, which is
I
my
love it.
favorite place in the house. Like Esther Perel is one of my heroes. I've read
Mm,
Mating in Captivity 100 times, I think, and it's, super marked up.
I need to get that.
You know,
Never heard of
yeah.
it.
But it's like, yeah, I just try to, every time I read something, every time I learn something, I'm
Mm,
going to, David Bayer, is someone who I'm going to his conference in a few weeks. And I had originally told myself, okay, no more conferences, no more seminars, no more workshops, no more retreats, no more anything. But every time I see something that I'm interested, it's like, not only is there something new to learn, but it also deepens my understanding of things that I already know, because you're hearing those universal laws and those universal principles from someone else's perspective and someone else's
mm,
view, and then it shines like a light and reinforces it, and you hear it in a
Mhm.
new way,
In a new
but
way.
it's underpinning these universal truths. And that is something,
Yeah.
even in a weird way, it applies in my work. Like, I'm a marketing professional, and I want all of my clients to do their branding and write their vivid vision and have a strong why, and what's the mission statement, and who are we serving, and how are we helping them. And then when they ask me,
Okay.
like, what platforms should I be on, what colors should my logo be, it's like, well, I don't know. The answer is in our source material. The answer is in these truths. It's how we apply that information. So if we know, in marketing, we know the truths of who we are talking to and what we want to say and how we can serve, then everything else is like comes, is a decision that comes out of that. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I think fundamentally this is a core piece for me of something that I'm here to, sort of like discover or be
Mhm.
curious about. And that's the
Mhm.
first part. And then the willingness, like the willingness to be wrong,
Yeah.
the willingness to read something out of the box, the willingness to be uncomfortable, the willingness to not know it all, and have it all
Mhm.
together. I was kind of laughing to myself a little bit as we started, and why I even joked about Cody was because, I mean, I just called him last week, like, just not
Mm.
crying tears, because I've been stuck with some stuff. And I just, you think to yourself, like, I've done so much work, and hearing
Yeah.
you say, like, my journey of transformation, it started when I was 19, I'm 46, 27 years, like, I should have it together. But the willingness to not know, and to surrender, and to ask for help, and to be
Mm.
uncomfortable and step out of the box and read the next thing, like, just the idea of wanting to know and being willing to learn, I think, is the only
Mhm.
two skills that we really need as humans.
Mm.
Yeah.
So good. And just to double click on the curiosity piece, I the as successful deemed by revenue. Not that that's the pinnacle of success,
Sure.
but two of the most financially successful men that I've ever spoken to, both nine figures, they both said curiosity was the number one trait that really allowed for them to get to the place that they have in their business.
Hmm.
So again, not that that's the ultimate metric of success by any means, yet that curiosity element, and to your point of how if it's a universal capital T truth, it transcends into every vertical, into every
Hmm.
industry, into every part of our lives.
Correct.
I'm thinking about even applying business principles to our personal lives. Like, what is your mission? What are, to your point, so very, very similar in terms of, if you know your mission for your business, if you know why you're doing it, what your values are, well, do you have that same application for your family? Do you actually have a mission as a family? Do you
Yeah.
have values that guide you? Do your kids know what your values are? And so there's something there that I think it's these capital T truths that really do it's cross generational, cross industry, cross culture, and it really is applicable to every single one of us because it has to do more so with the human being, and then the application thereof is very niche and very specific. So curiosity, willingness to learn, and I love how you said willingness to be wrong. That's like
Yeah,
that's
but if you're curious, right, you'd have to, it's like almost like a chicken or the egg with those two, because in order to
yes.
be curious, you'd have to not know, because isn't that the essence of curiosity, in a sense, is like, I
Mm,
don't know something, so I'm curious to find out, or I think I know something, but I want to know for sure. And so if you're not willing to be wrong, or if you have like certainty in knowing everything, then you don't have curiosity, because if you know something, then why would you be curious about it? And so I think they just go, so the willingness to not know, it kind of feeds the curiosity, and then as you learn more, the willingness to be wrong or make changes or whatever kind of comes back full circle
yes.
to being willing
Being,
to change your thinking, or to broaden your thinking, or
mm,
whatever is required.
I love that. I want to ask you a question that
Okay.
came from Superman Language. He says, what can you say? What is something you would say to your younger self to
Mm.
make effectively like your present self, like what would you say, I guess, to your younger self that would have helped you along your way?
Um, well, oh man, two things. I think one of the reasons that Dr. Dispenza's work has made such an impact on me is because prior to that, everyone was telling me that I didn't love myself. You don't love yourself. You should love yourself. You should. And I kept thinking to myself, like, what do you mean? Like, I'm awesome. Like, I think I'm great. I could list all my qualities. I'm smart. My little dating profile over here, like, uh, the idea that I could, but what transformed when I realized, oh, that's what self-love means, um, was the idea of like radical acceptance of everything about me, including that bucket that we term flaws and things that maybe society externally, like I felt ashamed or embarrassed
Yes.
of. And being an extrovert, I'm also a Scorpio. I have a very big, bold, loud, I take up space, and that sometimes leads me to feel embarrassed later about things that I said and did. But I learned through meditating
Mm.
how amazing I was as a soul. And I got
Oh,
connected with like that soul and fell in love with that soul. And that's when I went, oh, that's what they mean by loving myself. Like, not like my human self is awesome, but just back to capital T truth and then application. My soul, who I am as a soul, like falling in love with that beautiful energy that's playing around here in human form. It like just gave me so much space to mess up, to not know, to get it wrong, to embarrass myself, to do all of these things, because at the core, none of those things is who I am. At the core, I am, and kind of like when you ask me who am I'm like, how do I put into words that
yes.
who I am is this energy, this consciousness that somebody gave a name, Kate, to, and I'm here expressing myself and learning and growing. Um, and that's what, doing my part to help expand our universal connected consciousness. And that's really what we're all here doing. But it was about getting connected with her. And sometimes I think that does look like the practice or the exercise of like the inner child
Yeah.
work, because oftentimes that inner child can represent sort of like our essence or like that soul
Mm.
work. And so, but the funny part about saying like, could you go back and share it, is I don't know that I would have understood what that meant
Mm.
anyway.
Mm.
And so I don't really know. Part of loving that soul also means loving every stage, because you're always doing the best you could with the information that you have. So you'd almost not want to go back, or maybe you'd want to, but you wouldn't feel a need to go back and share it. And so it's one of the reasons I
Mm.
feel so good and love this decade of my life. I'm 46. I've stopped dyeing my hair. This is like
I
gray
like it. It looks
out.
beautiful.
Um, and that's part of just the everything. I mean, it's been like 3 or 4 years, and so I love it because I do feel that what they talk about, the wisdom, I can see the stuff that I think I could have done differently. But the beauty of it is when you are really fully connected with
Mm.
loving that soul, you don't actually feel like you want to go back and change
Mm.
anything, because it's what led you to where you are now.
Mm. So good. Yeah, I've heard different folks share something along the lines of like, I wouldn't change it because I wouldn't be who I am today, and I really love who I am today. And I think that that's just, man, isn't that a beautiful place to be? And to your point about like, I'm a soul, I think to kind of drive that, like bring that a little bit more grounded, because I think for folks who hear that, it's like, well, what does that mean? When you do heart surgery, you don't find the person. When you cut them open, they're not inside. That's one of the best examples I've heard of like, oh yeah, I'm here. I'm not this physical body. And I just love that example of when you cut someone open, you don't find them. It's just like their physical body. And I just love that concept, because otherwise it can feel a little bit existential of like, what does it mean? But to view it in that way, where it is like, yeah,
I
you're not
have an
going to find your soul.
I have an I don't know if this is relevant to me, but I don't know if it's relevant to you. I had to do a quick Google so that I don't
Yes,
say
tell me.
wrong, but there's an experiment. It's called the 21 grams experiment, I think, which it roughly equates to about 7 pounds. And they say that the moment that the person passes, a person, dies, they lose 7 pounds or 21 grams.
Wow, that's
So
so fascinating. I
isn't
just
that
got chills. I've
interesting?
never heard of that.
Yeah.
Whoa, chills.
Um,
That's so wild.
so yeah, they tried. That was. I'm reading it. This is Duncan McDougall attempted to measure the weight of the soul in 1907 by weighing
Oh my
6
gosh.
patients at death, and that yeah. So maybe our souls weigh 7 pounds. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but I can
I'm
hold it as a possibility and something that's
I love
very
this.
interesting.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've talked about a number of things, Kate, that you've pursued in your life over the last, let's say, decade, but I know it's been, leading up to this decade.
Sure.
Right now, you're living a very, I mean, honestly, it's like a very cool life. You're in Mexico, you're right on the water, and you're a nomad, traveling the world in so many ways, and an entrepreneur, and you've really created a life of freedom. And so I'd love for you to help us understand, when you say freedom, what does freedom mean to you? What does that feel like, sound like? What do your days look like when you are walking in alignment with freedom?
Mm. Talk about something else that has changed and evolved for me over the years. What does that word mean? I think the first thing it meant for me was financial freedom. And so, yeah, my background, my degree is in dance from university. I was a ballet dancer, and that's all I ever wanted to do. But I very, very fortunately stumbled into the internet as a day job while I was teaching dance. And that provided so many opportunities for me, and also so many examples of people that were entrepreneurs. So I'm a very reluctant entrepreneur. I didn't set out to do this. It wasn't like I'm not the person who had the lemonade stand at 7 years old or whatever. So everybody knew, oh, I was always selling something. I knew you were going to be an entrepreneur or whatever. That's definitely not the case for me. I very reluctantly found this, and it was a great, it was a great fit for part of my Kate Buck Jr. personality. Felt very expressed through social media. And so quickly, back 2008, 2009, I was growing my brand online. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have done that, because it has, I say in like some ways that work, doing that work, then the idea of doing work now that will continue to feed, you for years in your life, that definitely is work that I did. That has continued. Building a brand then is something that has continued to serve me in many ways. And so financial freedom was kind of the first one. Time freedom is the other one. And I waver in and out of this one. When you're an entrepreneur, if you're feeling passionate and loving what you're up to, sometimes that you don't, not counting it in hours, but I live at the beach and I want to be there as much as possible. I will say I moved to vacation land because, I have traveled a bunch of places and all of that, but it's like I'm always on vacation, but I'm also never on vacation. We're inside. I'm doing a Zoom. I'm not at the beach right now. Real-time freedom would come to me from an extreme level of financial freedom where I would never have to. I would just disappear from the grid altogether. But still, we live inside this construct, right? We live inside this construct where, there's these rules, and they are that we we required, we were required to play these roles and do these things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would just meditate and hang out at the beach all day. But really, like having the freedom, but with my job being location independent,
Mm,
um, is another a location freedom, right? So
yeah.
financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom has been like the biggest benefit for me from being an entrepreneur is that my laptop and I have traveled to 30 countries. And I don't really need much more than my
Yeah.
laptop and an internet connection in order
Yeah.
to run my business and support my clients.
So
Um,
good.
which that is what has allowed me to not only just travel for my own personal benefit, but also like to go to 20 Joe
Yeah.
Dispenza conferences, and all of
Seriously.
that. And yeah, in this next phase of life, I hope it does look like um, more freedom to like invest, more freedom to work on
Mm,
projects that I'm aligned on, freedom
yeah.
to work less time, but I think there's all different kinds of freedoms. And so it's like freedom from what I'll share one more. And I know I've kind of been, it's a long answer, but, part of that self-love stuff I was talking about, that self-love stuff I was talking about.
Yeah.
And when I really went deep, like during the pandemic, one of the questions you had asked me that maybe we would get to or not is relationships.
Mm,
And I think
mhm,
that my work in self-love has given me the opportunity to choose to be in or not be in a relationship, whereas prior to that, I would have desired
mm,
and tried harder. So I feel freedom from a lot of things. I feel freedom to live where I want. I feel the freedom to kind of make my own schedule and
mm,
be able to work when
yeah.
mostly when I want. And I also do right now feel the freedom to live where I want, and I feel
Mhm.
freedom to I'm calling it my golden girl era,
Oh,
um, where
cute.
I'm just really focused on myself. I'm really focused on growing myself as a person and working on reaching my own goals. And I
Mhm,
don't feel any like pressure to be more successful in any
mhm,
particular area of life. There's a
mhm,
lot of things I would like to do and that I
mhm,
want to do or I'd love to have happen, but I don't feel any kind of like pressure
mhm.
to be more successful in any particular area.
Yeah, that's freedom. You no longer have to perform in order to secure love and worth and belonging. That's freedom, you know? Um, in so many ways, you said financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, and I wondered too if it really is the like inner freedom
Mm,
where it really is like I actually internally I am free from the external. I
mm,
remember this moment in I guess probably 2022 where I realized I had been living so oriented towards the external, looking around me. It's kind of like I liken it to my compass was broken. It was navigated east and west. And I was looking to the right and to the left and looking east and west and saying, you guys tell me who to be, how to live, how to show up. And basically, by your definitions, I find my worth and I find my value. And I realized I was effectively in that east and west. I was horizontally aligned rather than my compass navigating north. And
mm,
looking in and up and saying, okay, God, like, who did you make me to be? Who am I uniquely designed to be? And in regaining vertical alignment, I have regained so much freedom because now I'm no longer harnessed to the opinions and expectations of others to drive my mission and my worth and my meaning because now it's internally sourced. So effectively having our source no longer be external but rather internal. And that has just yielded so much freedom. And then the manifestation of that is that we get to choose time, location, financial. It's kind of like that so often comes as a result.
well, there's a step that comes first I've found before
Mm,
that, which comes the a little bit of like paralysis, because when you're no longer driving towards or being driven by the things that are external that used
mm,
to unconsciously drive you, you sometimes go through, I've noticed for myself in a few, of my friends or people in my life is like there can be anyway this phase of a little bit of like apathy or like
Mm,
there's nothing, because when you're actually really are free of all constraint, the whole Buddhist, like literally unattached to
yeah.
anything, then for a moment, right, in that space of nothing, at least for me, I had this moment of like, I don't know, like, but that's kind of the beauty is there. And
Mm,
landmark, they say, you create a clearing when you get to a space of nothing, you create a clearing. And then from there, all
interesting.
things are possible, right? So, same kind of capital T truth Dispenza is that you go from 3D through 4D to 5D, which is
Yeah.
from everything
So
to
good.
nothing. I mean,
I mean,
sorry,
something
something to nothing to everything. So then in the space of nothingness where you have nothing, now you can create, and from source. Now you can create from without constraints. And so I just have found that sometimes in that space of nothing, I'm like, well, I don't need anything. I don't want anything. Like, I'm good. Beach and margarita for the rest of my life sounds good to me. But really, that's only fulfilling for,
Yes,
so long. But
yes,
it does bring up this question of like, well, then what? I
yeah,
really hit that when I was turning 40. And a lot of people say that they do like these reflections when they're 40. And I was like, I had launched a best-selling course online and had thousands and thousands of people give me testimonials that I helped change their life. Like,
wow,
check, made a huge impact. Like, check, traveled to 30 countries. Like, check, had like what my mind could have conceived as success as a child.
yeah,
For the most part, I have felt very fulfilled and like I had achieved those things. And so that was where I was like, well, what's next? And then I created this idea of buying a condo and moving to Mexico and all of that. And I remember even after I finished and fulfilled all that, then I was like, I always have these moments where I'm like, okay, well, I did that. Now what?
now what? Yeah.
And so I'm actually a little bit in that space,
Mhm.
now. And then I'm kind of trying to change direction and what's next,
Mm,
for me too, which is part of what what I called Cody just, kind of like snot crying in tears about. And thanks to him for sorting me out on that one.
mm,
Because yeah, it's not like and I don't have some that I'm not a nine figure. This is another funny thing is
yeah.
that definition is crazy. I'm not a nine figure, business owner. I'm not blah, blah, I'm not all these things.
Mhm.
But I'm very, very fulfilled by the success that I've had. I think I have this underlying sense that I've, to use like popular terms, like I've broken some generational curses or
Yeah.
something. I feel like I've accomplished things that energetically was not necessarily like I wasn't necessarily programmed,
Mhm.
for. And that feels, I'm the first person in my family to be financially free, and I'm able to support
Mm.
and help my family like financially. and
That's
and
huge.
and so that feels like that feels good to me. That feels right. And it doesn't fuel this ambition or desire for more. It feels like the next step is moving towards less,
Mm,
at least for me.
mm. So good. Kate, I love that. And I love the ebbs and flows of seasons. It's never, freedom is going to look so different for every single one of us. Because to your point, what's my mission? What's my calling? What's my why for this season? You mentioned that. What's your why? And knowing what is compelling us inside in terms of why we feel called to do something is really, really beautiful and it's powerful because then when the going gets tough, our why sustains us beyond just willpower. And so having a clarity of why and having something that really it's like pulling us and drawing us from that internal state so
Mm,
that when we are exhausted or we are experiencing resistance, there's something deeper that calls to us. So I love that, knowing our why. And to your point of the self-love, I think that that's important to kind of return to, especially in terms of the relationship side. There's just
mm,
been this fascination and rather obsession with romance that I've seen. And and experienced firsthand, you know, that's the ending of all fairy tales, and that's what indicates success in so many of these movies that come out of Hollywood, and the stories that very subconsciously influence the way that we think is you live happily ever after, and there's no after the marriage, you know, there's no it ends with them riding into the sunset and never talks about the reality of it. And so there's this kind of false sense of I'm not complete until that's part of my story. And so with this whole element of really learning to love you, you know, self-love isn't, oh, I'm just going to take bubble baths. Self-love is really being able to have the respect and the honor for ourselves that, again, with the why, propels us to do the work. It propels us to fill our own cups so that we love others more, so that we're not taking from the little that we do have, but we're able to give from our overflow and give from all this excess and reserve because we are already good. You know, when we're coming from that place of being filled, man, now we're actually able to give freely. That's like almost when we're internally free, then our love is free as well. And it's not an exchange, and it's no longer a transaction.
Mm. I so agree with you there. Around when it comes to this idea of self-love and then relationships, my journey in that realm has gone from, you know, I was married and I had
Mm,
and I've been in long-term relationships. I had a, you know, I've had the good ones and I've had the not so good ones. And then I finally decided to take that time. I mean, that was what the pandemic and kind of going deep in Dr. Joe's work for me was. I ended up, and moving here was, I ended up spending a lot of time alone. I think I'm probably
mm,
now 5 or 6 years later, you know, like, I don't know, borderline maybe too much time. Because co-regulation, I do think I've learned is very important.
yes. Yeah, that's
But
good.
but a couple of things is one, yeah, in learning to love myself, I didn't have this desire or like this unconscious need.
Yeah.
Two is you become really clear about, you create a joyful life that you love, and then you, if you just do engage in even friendships, relationships,
Mhm.
business partnerships, and or romantic things, you want them to be
Mhm.
additive, not that there's not a give and take, but like a net positive, that it brings good
Yes.
things to your life. Because if it doesn't and it takes away, then you're at a better place when
Mm,
you're by yourself. And so that's something like, when someone new enters my space, that I'm considering, and not that I'm not a giver and that it should be all about giving. That's not what I mean. But I just mean, at the end of the day, do I feel like my life is better
yes.
for engaging in this relationship? But I think, so that those are the things that were important to me. But then in this season in this season where I am trying to figure out what's next, actually last year,
Mhm.
um, and part of actually what came out of me being at Dr. Dispenza at a 10-day workshop was what I actually realized. And I don't know if Cody's still listening, but because I saw he commented, but actually the first relationship beyond my relationship with myself is my relationship with my higher power. And
Mm,
so I kind of made this declaration, because like even in like the footprints scripture that many of us kind of are
yeah,
familiar with, you know, that it's like, oh, well, what about when there was only one set of footprints? Like, it
chills.
was then that I carried you. And it's like, that's actually my co-creator in life, and my partner in this life is the divine first and
Mm.
foremost. And that's some big shoes to fill, by the way. Maybe that's why I'm single. Um,
Oh,
and or, you know, yeah, exactly. But
mhm.
so like, I'm working on shoring up that relationship first. And I really kind of dedicated myself this year. I even did this hilarious, maybe some of my posts that you saw, I did a photo shoot where I was wearing this beautiful white dress, and I called it Married to the
Mhm.
Divine. But it was me making a
Mhm.
wholehearted commitment to put God first in my life,
Wow.
and my relationship with myself and God first,
Mm,
above all other relationships. And for me,
mhm.
like right now, kind of until, you know, not until I have that sorted, but, you know, I feel like my
Yeah,
partnership relationship may come
yes.
at a time. But I think that we often use other relationships like for fulfillment and and for
Mm,
me that just became, I don't know why, and this is just, I'm
yeah.
not saying this is for everybody. You just asked me to share, my
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
journey. As a woman, I'm 46, I'm single, and it felt like that was the thing to do, is like, I have to remember that I'm not carrying the weight of my business and my family and my finances and my
Mm,
stepkids and my self-care and my all of that on my own. And
yeah.
I just found myself kept saying, like, I'd love to have a partner to support me in this. I want to
Mm,
be in a relationship because I want a partner in life to help make these decisions and carry the burdens of life. And that was, again, credit to Mr. Jefferson. You should invite him on
mm. I would
next.
love to have
Yeah, you really, really should. Is he's like, but you're not alone.
him.
You're not carrying it all by yourself. What are you talking
That's
about? And I was
huge.
like, oh, you're right. And so love is an energy. It's a force. We're expressing it for each other right here, being on this show. We're expressing it with the listeners, and they're expressing it back. And so love is an energy and is a force. And I think I've
Mm,
just been trying to find it with my friends and with my activities, with my work, with my clients,
yeah.
my family, and not be so focused on it showing up like
Mm.
that's romantic love.
I'm so grateful for you saying that. I was surprised of, so I'm in the tail end of writing my book, and I've written, God bless it, about 4 different versions. So I'm in the final stage of mine. I host retreats, and one of the retreats I had everybody read the book before they arrived. And a woman shared that the thing that stood out to her the most out of everything was her relationship with her husband had just ended. And she said that the number one thing that was most impactful was the fact that I didn't jump into another relationship. And Kate, I think that what you just shared is incredibly profound for every single person, male or female, who are in this season of either transition out of relationship or even considering the next one. Because there's something where when our identity is wrapped in that, if we've never been alone too, like, my gosh, have we been alone? What
Mhm.
were you going to say?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I hadn't been alone in a very long time. And I would have told you it was circumstantial. Like, I just happened to meet someone.
Yeah.
I just happened. But when I actually declared that I was going to
Mm,
be alone on purpose, it's
mhm.
like so many things in my life have changed. And I can definitely see relationships that I would have been in, but I would have been compromising or
Yeah. Yeah.
settling or, and then what? So for drama or whatever, it's like, even just going out on it sounds so awful. I'm putting myself on blast, but even just going out on a date sometime, it's like,
Mm,
or I could stay home and finish reading that book that I love, or just even
yeah.
resting my body and zoning out on some TV,
Yeah.
or being in a restaurant where maybe like the meal isn't all that healthy and I can cook at home. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. God's gonna have to just like bring this man and put him on my doorstep and never
Mm,
wanna, leave
I
the
love
house
it.
or whatever, I'm just kidding. But it's like those are all trade-offs. Everything
Yes.
is a trade-off.
Everything is a trade-off.
And so all of these things in my life that I've cultivated now for myself and that I love, I'm less likely to trade them for romantic
Mm,
love, right? Like, so
mhm.
romantic love has just become like it's cherished on this. And not that I don't want to be in a relationship, that I think
Right.
I would love to be a partner to someone. I would love to have partnership in my life. I don't mean it that way. I just mean it's not the prized thing at the
Yes.
time. It's probably actually the number one thing on my list when I was 40 that I was like, check, 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 check. Well, that's probably the one box left that really like
Mm,
remains unchecked in the way that I would like it to be.
yeah.
Like, I can't live out the rest of my life like trying to check that
Yes.
box. And
Yes.
so I
Love
just
it.
I made myself and the divine, uh,
Mm,
the romantic, partnership love that I'm seeking.
I
And
love it.
that's my friends will tell you my Golden Girls story, that I call I'm in my Golden Girls era, And that is really what this era has been about, and I can't wait. I'm the oldest of most of my friends, and so I look
Mm,
forward to when they're in their
yeah.
mid-40s approaching 50 to see, how life kind of changes and evolves
Mm,
for them, because it has been more internal the older
yeah.
that I've got.
Yeah. I want to read 2 comments from Laura Lamb. She says, "You are such a blessing to so many of us, Kate."
Aw,
And she
thank
also, just to echo that, she says, "Same here, and I'm happy right now putting my relationship with God first."
mm,
Y'all, I love that this is kind of where we're ending, talk about freedom, how to glean that freedom. External freedom so often is a result of the inner freedom that we have, because we can have all the wealth, but if we don't have health, we're not free. If we don't have inner peace, really actually being at peace and really loving who we are in the life that we've lived, is that even freedom? I read about these celebrities who get all the fame, all the wealth, and they're so empty, and they're like, oh, there's a lot more inner work that I need to do. So, to your point, in really coming home to ourselves, so often that's actually where we experience the presence of God so much, because we are made like him, like knows like, and we're made like the greatest creator, and to co-create with him is such a privilege and such an incredible experience, and it's so deeply, deeply satisfying. And then you add to that the wealth, add to that the romance, add to
mm,
that, but you're already coming from a place of, it's like when people talk about abundance, I think that for me is what abundance really means, is that I am
mhm.
good no matter what, and everything is an addition,
Yeah,
everything's an add-on, everything's a plus. So
yeah.
that's freedom in so many ways. Kate, thank you
You're
so
so
much for coming on
welcome.
the show, and thank you for how you embody this and live it out so with such integrity. It's a beautiful example. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks. I really appreciate you inviting me on. So
You
thanks
too.
for having me.
You
This
too.
was awesome. We should definitely keep the conversation
Yes,
going.
I would love this. Oh, awesome. So happy to see you. Laura, really love this conversation. Guys, thank you so much for joining. Few housekeeping. Number one, we are doing trivia tonight, which I'm super excited about. We're doing 90s music trivia at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Come and join us if you guys want to. Second, housekeeping. How can people find out more about you, Kate, and work with you?
I'm Kate Buck Jr. on all the platforms at Kate Buck JR. And if you're interested in, working online and starting a business, that website is socialmediapro.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. And last point of housekeeping, the Knowing Retreat is March 26th through 29th. So let me know if you're interested, and I would love to have you. I call it the boot camp of the soul, but this time we're doing a little bit more so on the how that shows up in your external world. So thank you so much, Kate. So grateful for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Y'all
Grateful.
have a wonderful, wonderful day. Go follow Kate, check out her websites, and I will see you tonight on The Knowing Show for trivia.